Welcome to Front Office Pros. Today, we're going to be talking about our top 10 IDP Dynasty sleepers who benefit most from the 2025 NFL Draft.
Hike!
In this episode, this will be Joe and I's consensus top 10 IDP Dynasty sleepers. And what we're going to be talking about in this episode is there's going to be some positions for these NFL teams that if they don't address it in the NFL Draft, there's a great opportunity ahead of them. So, Joe, let's talk about the first guy. Who do we've got there?
Yeah, first guy we got is Dayo Odeyingbo, who went from the Indianapolis Colts over to the Chicago Bears defense. And he's got a decent amount of opportunity right now. And I think he's got an opportunity to do better than what he did previously with the Indianapolis Colts, just because the Bears really went out and kind of beefed up this defensive line. You know, Gervin Dexter had a kind of a breakout year last year, played really well. They brought over Grady Jarrett from the Falcons, and then he also gets to play alongside Montez Sweat. And then, you know, behind him, I know they don't have the most depth at defensive end. That's kind of why if they don't address that, he will be a winner here. And they do have Austin Booker, who I know they took a flyer on him, you know, kind of a late round draft pick. But outside of that, they don't really have anyone for Dayo Odeyingbo to worry about. And last year, in terms of production with the Colts, you know, he did have 3 sacks, played all 17 games. So I would expect him to possibly be able to get more so what he did in 2023, where he had around the 8 sack mark.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the underlying metrics with him, according to Next Gen Stats, he led the Colts with 50 QB pressures. And if you look at the contract that they signed him to, it was a 3-year deal, $48 million, with an average of $16 million, total guaranteed of $32, which is over 50%. So, like you said, he's got the Bears actually have a decent supporting cast now with Grady Jarrett, Gervin Dexter, and Montez Sweat as his bookend. So if the Bears don't end up drafting another edge rusher, he gets to be the guy. And he really hasn't been able to start that many games. He's been more of a rotating player. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Joe, when he was drafted in the second round, I think it was out of Vanderbilt, if I'm not mistaken, he was injured. There was talk that he would have been a first round pick, but I believe he came into the league injured, and so I want to say he didn't really play that many games. Am I right about that? Because I want to say that's based on memory, but I'm pretty sure that was the case.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. He was a second round pick out of Vanderbilt, and his rookie year he played 10 games, and then he's played the full 17 ever since.
Okay, yeah, because I want to say there was a reason why he slid to the second round. And I think it was due to something medical that happened to him. So he hasn't been able to start a lot of games. And honestly, it makes a lot of sense with the Colts, too. I mean, now they drafted Latu. He now gets to be, you know, more of the guy in Indianapolis. But I think Odeyingbo, I think this is a great opportunity for him in Chicago.
Yeah, I agree. And I think he went to a nice place, and especially with, you know, the addition of Jarrett there as well. That interior really should help, you know, him and Montez Sweat increase their sack production.
So the next player we're going to be talking about, and I'll take this one, Joe, it's going to be a defensive end for our number 2 person, and that's going to be defensive end Joseph Ossai. Now, he's a guy who you may not be familiar with, but that's probably because he's been behind some really good players over in Cincinnati. You've got Trey Hendrickson, who there's a possibility this guy may not even play, Joe. He's in a contract dispute. There's says, hey, he may even hold out. Sam Hubbard retired. But you saw Joseph Ossai this past year really start to turn it on at the end of the year. He had 5 sacks, 46 total tackles. He has a great opportunity ahead of him. We've been seeing the Cincinnati Bengals. They've been signing everybody on the offense, right? They give Joe Burrow the big extension. They give T. Higgins the big extension. They give Jamar Chase the big extension. Well, that means they can't give a lot of money on the defensive side of the ball. So as a result, someone's got to step up. We talked about also possibly Myles Murphy, but you and I ended up going with Joseph Ossai as a guy. He signed a 1-year prove-it deal, $7 million contract. So he has a lot to play for, and he's going to have a great opportunity ahead of him.
Yeah, 100%. And hopefully, you know, they are able to work something out with Trey Hendrickson. So then he has the benefit to, you know, for that 1 year that he's got, he can play alongside of Trey Hendrickson, and they can really wreak havoc on opposing quarterbacks together. Because if not, I mean, that's going to be a rough situation for him, and then it'll be really him and Miles Murphy outside of them drafting somebody. That would definitely be a tough situation, and they lost a lot, depth along the interior defensive line as well. So their defensive line is pretty bare bones, especially without Trey Hendrickson.
I mean, the guy, I want to say, what was he, former second round pick out of Texas? I want to say, or was he a first round? I don't think he was a first rounder.
I don't know what round, but I don't think he was a first rounder either.
Okay. Yeah, I don't think he was. So to me, I think that he's dealt with some injuries in his career, which hasn't really enabled him to really step up and be that player that they thought he would be.
No, and he hasn't exactly been the player I thought he would be, as I've kind of had him on and off my dynasty roster and IDP leagues. But I did get to have the benefit of what he did last year, though.
So I tested my luck there. He did go to Texas, but he was a third round pick, not a second round pick. So didn't get it all the way this time. Are you enjoying this episode so far? Well, if you are, subscribe to our YouTube channel, smash that like button, and hit the notification bell for upcoming videos. We do videos throughout the year, so you're not going to want to miss what we have in store. But who do we got for number 3, Joe?
Yeah, number 3, we've got linebacker Akeem Davis-Gaither with the Arizona Cardinals. And the reason we've got him in our list here is he's got an increased opportunity to step in at the linebacker's position, as Kyzir White is currently a free agent. But Kyzir White had a good year with the Cardinals last year as a starting inside linebacker. He had 137 total tackles. 60 of those were solos, 77 of those were assisted. He also had 2.5 sacks as well. So we'd like that opportunity for a guy like Akeem Davis-Gaither to fill in that Kyzir White role and hopefully bring some IDP tackle production there.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, if you look at his production, Davis-Gaither's, he really hasn't done all that much. I mean, you look at his first 4 years in the NFL. The most amount of tackles he had was 30. Really was purely a backup guy. I believe he played a good amount of special teams. This past year had a pretty decently interesting year. 82 total tackles, 41 solo. So you may say, like, wow, you guys really having him at 3. That's kind of high. But let's not forget, I mean, look at Zach Baum. Zach Baum was a pure special teams guy. He really did not see the field in New Orleans, was a huge disappointment. Went to Philadelphia, and honestly, he was a Defensive Player of the Year candidate. So when linebackers can kind of come out of nowhere if they can get in the right spot. So if they don't address the linebacker room, I mean, we had talked about maybe Mack Wilson, but I think you and I both were more interested in Davis-Gaither.
Yeah, just because I feel like he's really stepping into the Kyzir White role, which I don't think Mack Wilson's role will change. He seems to be more of the in coverage linebacker. They also like to really blitz him and move him around. More of a kind of a chess piece for the Cardinals defense, where I think Akeem Davis-Gaither's really just got the chance to be the leading tackle guy, similar to what Kyzir White was able to do for the Cardinals.
So at number 4, we're going to be talking about safety Ardarius Washington of the Baltimore Ravens. He's a guy who, not a household name, probably didn't know him, but, he was interesting because he ended up supplanting Marcus Williams as a starting safety in Baltimore. Marcus Williams is a guy that they paid a decent amount of money, and it was a multi-year contract to bring him in. But that didn't stop Ardarius Washington from taking over. Had 64 total tackles, sack, 2 interceptions, 8 pass deflections. Gets to play alongside Kyle Hamilton. So it could be a great opportunity going forward for Ardarius Washington if they don't end up picking up another safety in the draft, because at this point, it seems like his opportunity right now.
Yeah, it definitely does. And I tell you, I mean, the defense really changed dramatically with moving Kyle Hamilton back to free safety, having Ardarius Washington over there over Marcus Williams as well. Those couple of changes really turned the corner for the Baltimore Ravens defense. So, I think there is a chance that they don't address that, and just maybe if they do, maybe a later round just for depth, and it really doesn't really threaten Ardarius Washington's situation, though.
All right, Joe, so who do we got for number 5?
Yeah, number 5, we got safety Jaden Hicks of the Kansas City Chiefs. And, he's a guy that was more of a depth safety last year. He did amass 23 solo tackles, but he's got a lot of opportunity now with Justin Reid moving on, going over to the New Orleans Saints. And, we've seen this with the Kansas City Chiefs. They allow these veteran players to move on, these young and up-and-coming guys, take over. And there's a lot of production there to be had at the safety position. I mean, Justin Reid in 16 games last year had 87 total tackles. 61 of those were solo. Also had a couple of picks. So, we've seen the Kansas City Chiefs safeties, whether it was Tyrann Mathieu before that, Justin Reid coming over. We've seen the production there and the IDP value of the Chiefs safeties. And I think Jaden Hicks has potential to kind of fill in that role and be the next guy.
Yeah, and you also have Brian Cook there. He had 78 total tackles, 55 solo, but I'm not all that impressed with him. And when we think about it in the draft process, there were a lot of people in the kind of that draft sphere that were really excited about Jaden Hicks and really thought that the Chiefs got a huge value out of him. I actually had thought that Hicks might have had more of a presence his rookie year. Didn't see that happening, but I think a part of the reason why they felt so confident in letting Justin Reid walk was because of Jaden Hicks. I think he'll be able to take over here next season.
Yeah, and I think I like him better than Brian Cook too, just because he's that strong safety, and typically they're able to play more get closer to the box, play more box snaps. Where Brian Cook, I feel like, is that more of the deep safety and ball hucking guy, which can be kind of boom or bust in IDP.
Now for number 6, this guy is not the most flashy, but it's going to be linebacker Elandon Roberts, former linebacker of the Steelers, signed with the Raiders. And you might be saying, this guy hasn't been relevant his whole career. Why are you talking about him? Well, it wasn't so long ago that a Pittsburgh linebacker in a similar vein went from the Steelers. I believe he went right to the Raiders, but maybe he went somewhere else, another pit stop before that. But that was Bobby Spillane. Bobby Spillane, he had 158 total tackles, 91 solo. He was incredible in Las Vegas, no longer there. And if you look at that depth chart, Joe, they've got nobody at the linebacker position. They lost to Vin Diablo. He's in Atlanta now. So someone's got to take over for the linebacker spot. And, I mean, we looked at a few guys. It seemed like Elandon Roberts was the guy. So if they don't, again, this is a big if. I mean, if they, Raiders could certainly draft somebody at the linebacker position, but if they don't, Elandon Roberts could be a great opportunity for him.
Yeah, and with the IDP leagues, I mean, doesn't have to always be the flashy names. I mean, it's the simple way is to find the path of production, and similar to like with a guy like Akeem Davis-Gaither. I mean, talk about Elandon Roberts, who has an opportunity. He's a veteran guy. Like you said, he's not the flashy name. He's not going to make flashy plays, but he's got the opportunity. And with Robert Spillane leaving, all that, and then there's all that production to potentially be had. I mean, there's no reason this guy can't amass a lot of tackles on that Raiders defense.
So let's head over to number 7. This is a guy you're familiar with, Joe.
Yep, we're going back to the Cincinnati Bengals defense and going with defensive tackle Kris Jenkins Jr. Saying I got familiarity with him because obviously he's out of Michigan, and like him to kind of build upon his rookie year in his second year, and he's going to be afforded an opportunity. With Sheldon Rankins moving on, he should be thrust into that starting role next to BJ Hill here. Now, the caveat is that they don't take one of these interior players in this year's draft, and Bengals are certainly going to have to, draft defense and be creative with their draft capital because they certainly don't have money to continue to add people in free agency, especially if they end up paying Trey Hendrickson. But Kris Jenkins is a guy, he played 15 total games. He had 31 tackles, also had 3 sacks, which is nice to see from the interior defense tackle position.
Those numbers are actually a lot better than I thought that they were because he wasn't a full-time player. So for him to be able to do that for an interior defensive lineman early in his career, I think that's pretty encouraging.
Yeah, I mean, especially the 3 sacks. I mean, that's a pretty good number, especially to build upon. And he had, just the fact that he's got that pass rush ability, really should help him out.
So at number 8, talking about the former first rounder, that's going to be defensive end Lukas Van Ness. a guy who came into the league as a project coming out of Iowa. He was a guy who wasn't a full-time starter ever in Iowa, but he had a lot of good traits that would translate to the NFL. Up to this point, he's been, I'd say, a disappointment. You could even say a bust. Last year, he had 33 total tackles, 3 sacks, but not a lot of competition there in that edge rusher room. You obviously have Kingsley and Nagerby, who he had 4.5 sacks, but the guy who was most prolific there is Rashawn Gary. But there's not really a lot happening there. Preston Smith is no longer there. He was also getting some snaps. So I think that if they don't address that defensive end position, Van Ness, maybe give him one more year to really show his soul.
Yeah, and he's a guy I thought was going to do a lot better as well. He really has been disappointing, but sometimes it takes defensive ends or just defensive players, not necessarily defensive ends, but just defensive players as a whole, to really, takes them a few years to really develop and then, really be a productive player. So, but like you said, I mean, this is going to be the put up or shut up time here for Lukas Van Ness.
I meant to say worth his salt. I didn't know that didn't sound right. Show his salt. I guess it's a Roman phrase. Did you know that?
No, I didn't really know where you were trying to go with it, so I just kind of left it there. But
I'm surprised you didn't nitpick me on that.
I don't know that phrase, so.
It's called worth one's salt, Joe. It says it's good or competent at the job or profession specified. That's what it means.
Okay.
Worth one's salt. Look at that. Now you learned something new today, Joe.
Yep, learn something new every day, Steve.
Well, at number 9, we've got, who do we got, Joe?
Yeah, we got linebacker Omar Speights of the Los Angeles Rams, and I think I'm more excited about him than you potentially are. Last year.
Well, you might have him on your roster, so I mean, you might be a little bit of a homer.
I'm slightly biased, as have him in Dynasty IDP, but he did have 67 total tackles. 37 of those were solo, but he's got increased opportunity here with Christian Roseboom moving along. I know they also brought in late Nate Landman, but he also hasn't exactly been able to stay healthy. So I think Roseboom could be maybe Omar Speights potentially be the more reliable guy there, and in his second year here, as kind of like Nate Landman when he's out there makes a lot of plays, but how many games is he going to give you? But in terms of production being lost or what's available there at the Rams defense, I mean, Roseboom had 135 tackles last year, 69 of those solo, had a sack and a pick as well.
I will give you credit. You scooped up Omar Speights like that when the opportunity.
Ernest Jones left, so
yeah, you sprung on that. So that was good for you to be able to get him. Again, based on this episode, right? If the Rams don't take a linebacker in the draft, it's got to be Speights or Landman. And up until this point, honestly, the Rams, for whatever reason, their defense, they just do not invest in the position. I can't remember a lot. I mean, besides Bobby Wagner when they signed him in for agency, I can't really think of a time that they really invested in the position. I mean, even Ernest Jones, I want to say, was like a 4th-round pick.
I believe it's a
South Carolina. I think he was a 4th-round pick out of South Carolina, if I'm not mistaken.
I think Ernest Jones was a 3rd-rounder.
You think was he from South Carolina?
I don't know. You know where these guys go.
Oh, come on. You don't know?
I don't know what college you went to. Absolutely not.
Oh, you watched the draft.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to find out. He did go to South Carolina, but he was a 3rd-round pick, not a 4th-round pick.
Man. I knew he was a 3rd.
I got the college. It's more impressive anyways.
Sure. Fair enough.
Oh, well, I guess it was a good blend. It was a good
blend. Good blend. I had the right round. You had the college. Yeah. I don't know what school you went to.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about our last player, number 10. And it's going to be a guy that was formerly on your team, Joe. So maybe you should be talking about him. But that's going to be linebacker Cody Barton. Now it's over with the Tennessee Titans. Cody Barton had 106 total tackles, 53 assisted, 53 solo. Tennessee Titans don't really have, a linebacker to speak of that could really be a tone setter for that defense. I want to say he signed a prove-it deal. This is a 1-year deal, I think, with the Titans, if I'm not mistaken. So, it could be a short stay for him, but it could be a great opportunity because the Titans need some help.
Yeah, they really do. I mean, he's got, Cody Barton's not the best overall linebacker, but he certainly is a guy that can get a bunch of tackles for you. But looks like he actually signed a 3-year, $21 million contract with the Titans.
Oh, wow. That was a big whiff on my part.
Including $5 million of that in a signing bonus and $9 million guaranteed.
Okay, so essentially a 1-year deal.
I was going to say it's structured like a 1-year deal, but total contract length is 3. But they do have an out in 2026, so it's still he's going to have to prove himself. But with the opportunity, I mean, Cody Barton isn't good in coverage, but he can go ahead and get you that run support and get the tackles.
Yeah, because if you look at the Titans, I mean, they don't have anybody. I mean, I did think Cedric Gray was a guy who was kind of interesting, but he didn't really pan out for them. But then they have Otis Reese, and that's it. I mean, Cody Barton really has a good opportunity over in Tennessee.
Yeah, especially really being the true veteran guy, and he should be the leader on that defense.
To close this out, do you know what round Cody Barton was taken or what college he went to?
No chance.
I have no idea either. I'm going to guess. Wisconsin, I think, was the college. And I'm going to go with like a 4th. But boy, do you have a guess?
Well, I got the information. So I can't guess.
Oh, you looked?
Well, yeah, I mean, I haven't pulled up.
He went to Utah, and he was a 3rd-round pick. There's no way I would have got that. No, I was way off.
Yeah, didn't know him, but I mean, obviously, I've known about him since he's been in the NFL, but I didn't have any idea where he got drafted or what school he went to.
So that does it for this episode. We talked about our top 10 consensus IDP Dynasty sleepers who benefit the most from the 2025 NFL Draft. Look, if you want to go acquire these guys, have at it, right? If you want to these are some preemptive moves. If you want to go ahead and do that, because if these teams do not address these positions of need from what we believe, all 10 of these guys have a great opportunity to have a very solid 2025 season, some viable starters for your IDP defense. If not, just keep them on the radar. That's what we're doing. We're staying on the radar. We're checking to see how these guys make out. And if these teams end up drafting players for those positions. If not, now you're in a green light. This is a yellow light. It's not a green light yet. But if you want to go for green, some people just want to – some people think yellow are green. I'm not like that. Although I do go through a lot of yellows, I feel like.
Oh, boy. Well, I guess it depends. Do you cautiously go through them, or are you speeding through them like a green light?
No, I guess I do speed through them a few times. I don't know. What about you?
It all depends.
You definitely do.
It all depends on the situation.
Oh, boy.
If how close I am to the yellow light.
That's a good point. That's a good point. That's a good point.
But I mean, you can. I mean, hey, if you want to go ahead and be preemptive, I mean, you can definitely be rewarded. It is risky, but if their situation does change and they do go ahead and draft somebody, but I mean, you could probably get good value right now, and then it could be the reward is there if you want to go ahead and take it as a green light here.
Well, I was just gonna say, I mean, that's the one benefit is I don't see you paying a premium for any of these guys.
No,
I mean, Van Ness, I don't see it. I think the guy, whoever has him, I think will be willing to ship him off. I don't think Kris Jenkins either. I mean, I don't think any of these players that you'd have to really give up a lot at this point.
No, probably not. I mean, a lot of these guys are kind of unproven or were buried on depth charts, switches teams. Now they have the opportunity.
And these are really deep league guys too. I mean, if you're starting 4 or 5 IDP people, this probably was not the right episode for you because we were going pretty deep at this episode.
Yeah, well, we're talking about sleepers, and you got to be true sleepers, and with that, it doesn't come a lot of production or guys that haven't had the opportunity but now do. So, just the nature of it, and we happen to be, in a 16-team dynasty league, and we start a lot of defenders. So,
yeah, that's for sure. That'll do it. So, that does it for this episode. Thank you so much for tuning in, and until next time.